So out of nowhere, cards start falling from the sky, like literally, nobody asks questions. Kids just start grabbing them like it's the hottest thing since sliced bread, and boom, a new game called Bakugan is born. Enter Dan Kuso, he becomes a rising top player. Here comes Akira, who probably should have just stayed home that day, instead brings his brother Shuji. Things just start slowing down because that's normal. Dan and Shuji both set the gate cards. Shuji throws out Subterra Mantries, Dan throws out Pyrus Serpenoid. Dan thought 320 beats 270, but Shuji says nah, gate card open. Mantries takes out Serpenoid and it's 1-0. Shuji throws out Terraclaw and Dan throws out Falconeer. Dan opens his gate card and ties it up 1-1. They throw the same Bakugan and duke it out like there's no tomorrow. Dan activates his ability card, and Shuji takes the L for round 3. Shuji sends Mantries back out, and Dan plays Falconeer again. My boy Shuji thought he had it with his gate and ability card, but Dan counters with his ace card, and that's it for the brothers. Back home, Dan brags to his homies online about how he's the best brawler. Runo is out here hating, and Julie is low-key simping. Dan's got 2 girls on him, but nah, he's got to be the best brawler in the world.
I'm a battle brawler, I'm not your boyfriend!
Marucho is encouraging Dan that someday he could beat Mr. Hotshot Shun, who's ranked number 1. A random voice appears talking about how they wish Dan would understand the real power of Bakugan, and that it ain't just some children's game and toy, because what else would you think when cards just start falling from the sky? This voice explains that there's a much larger battle going on in a world called Vestroia. Vestroia is powered by the 6 elements: Subterra, Helios, Darkus, Iquos, Ventus, and Pyrus. The voice Drago is trying to stop Naga from gaining so much power because it would only lead to his own destruction. Naga, being the villain that he is, obviously doesn't care. Shuji challenges Dan again to take the L a second time, except this time he has Darkus Bakugan. Shuji throws out Darkus Juggernoid, who has 320 Gs, against Dan's Pyrosaurus, who has 280 Gs, but Dan's gotta remind the kids that power levels don't mean anything.
Ah, come on, you gotta be kidding! That's it? That's all you got?
Hey, didn't anyone ever tell you size doesn't always matter?
In Vestroia, Naga finds the Infinity Core and Silent Core and tries to absorb it. This causes Vestroia to start collapsing, but Naga effed around and found out because he ended up trapping himself within the Silent Core. Dan, out of nowhere, starts tripping and sees Dragonoid fighting Darkus Fear Ripper. They then appear on the battlefield, and obviously Shuji takes the L. Back home, Dan finds out that everyone online suddenly can hear their Bakugan talk. The next day at a park, Runo finds herself battling a mysterious man named Masquerade. She loses, but at the cost of her own Bakugan, Terraclaw. Dan hears about this and swears to help get back her Bakugan by defeating Masquerade. Dan then finds out that Masquerade reached the top of the leaderboard and became rank 1. Dan challenges Masquerade, and before that happens, guess who's back? 3 Ls in a row is rough. Dan finally meets Masquerade, and before the battle begins, Masquerade drops a card on the battlefield. Wonder what it does. Dan is actually throwing some heat, but Masquerade ain't rank 1 for nothing. Play after play, Masquerade is just outsmarting Dan and even takes one of his Bakugan. The card that was dropped was the Doom card, which sends the opponent's Bakugan to a place called the Doom Dimension, which is basically purgatory for Bakugan. Drago is tight and starts going crazy and destroys the battlefield, ending the battle. Masquerade spares Dan and Drago because anime, and reminds Dan that there are much larger powers at play. An Iquos brawler named Rikamaru is going around bullying kids, trying to find someone that can beat him. After not being satisfied with being the best, Masquerade again, out of nowhere, offers Rikamaru and Iquos siege to terrorize people some more. Dan and Drago Loki has beef right now, and can't seem to work together after Drago's first crash out. The whole situation is just misunderstood. Dan just wants to be the best brawler while Drago is going through a crisis back home in Vestroia. Runo somehow gets herself a talking Bakugan as well, Heus Tigrera. Drago really hopes these humans can be trusted for when the time comes. Dan bumps into Rikamaru, and Lord and behold, he also has a Doom card. Masquerade is starting to form a cult, brainwashing these little kids to banish Bakugan for him. They each set their gate cards and throw out Iquos Robattalion and Pyrus Falconeer. Dan doesn't want to listen to Drago that water clearly beats fire, and goes on to say typical plot armor stuff.
Dan, his attribute is water!
It doesn't matter what attribute he has! I have you, Drago, and I can beat it!
Rikamaru throws out Iquos Juggernoid, and Dan throws out Pyrus Griffin. Finally, Rikamaru throws out Iquos Sage and activates Tsunami Wave to wipe out everything. Robattalion, Juggernoid, Falconeer, and Griffin are all sent to the Doom Dimension. Dan still thinks this is some sort of game and rushes all his moves, but still wins the battle because he forces Drago to use a risky technique. Dan only cares about winning, even sacrifices some of Drago's hometown homies. Drago and Dan just can't seem to be on one page, and some back and forth later, Dan throws Drago into the river. Even the homies back home was like, bruh, you're destined to be bros for life. At school, Dan overhears Rio talking about battle strategies on his BlackBerry sidekick. Dan heckles back that no matter what, big numbers equals wins. Dan, still salty about his breakup with Drago, causes Rio to drop his laptop. Masquerade comes to Rio's rescue and takes advantage of his feelings against Dan. Rio challenges Dan because he ain't bout to get bullied no more. In this battle, Pyrrhus Terraclaw, Pyrrhus Juggernoid, Pyrrhus Robotallion, and Darkus Mantries get sent to the Doom Dimension, and Rio actually manages to beat his op, because Dan realizes he's trash without Drago. Dan, humiliated, goes out and searches for Drago. It's dark, it's raining. Dan sees the errors of his ways, it's dramatic, but nonetheless, if it's meant to be, you will find each other. Dan and Drago make up and challenge Rio again, and I know my boy ain't losing to this scrub a second time. After an intense battle, Dan takes the dub with Drago and snaps Rio out of Masquerade's mind control. But we have not yet seen the last of Masquerade. At least Dan and Drago are a team now. One morning, while Dan's busy chatting with the other brawlers online, his mom interrupts with urgent news that there's a meat sale at the local market, and she needs him to go. A kid named Tatsuya is terrorizing the neighborhood when he runs into none other than surprise, surprise. Tatsuya, thinking he's on some Michael Jordan timing, challenges Masquerade and gets humbled immediately. We find out that Runo is a waitress at her family restaurant, and her family sends her to the market for that same meat sale. Runo, annoyed that she might bump into Dan, is won over by liver kebabs. All Dan wants is loin tips, and all Runo wants is liver kebabs. What could go wrong?
I love liver kebabs, liver kebabs.
Loin tips, loin tips.
Liver kebabs, liver kebabs.
Loin tips,
liver
loin
kebabs.
tips.
They actually meet for the first time ever, and after chit-chatting a bit, Dan runs off and Runo realizes he dropped his Bakupod with a message from Masquerade on it. Fueled by her hatred for Masquerade, she takes matters in her own hands and goes after Masquerade. Dan goes to find his Bakupod and ends up finding Runo about to start a battle with Tatsuya that's in place of Masquerade. Dan argues with Runo that this is his brawl, although Runo reasons with Dan that she wants to have one shot at getting revenge for her Bakugan that were sent into the Doom Dimension. Dan understands how much the battle means to her and allows her to battle. Runo struggles at first, but then locks in and wins the battle. Now that Runo and Dan finally met in person and realizes they're from the same hood in Wardington, they go to the amusement park together. Even online, Dan and Runo always bicker back and forth, and not much is different in person. They literally hate each other's guts. While arguing, twin brothers Kenta and Kenji were performing a magic show and pick on Dan and Runo to come on stage and pick a card. The card, you guessed it, the Doom card. You'll already know Masquerade has his fingers in this. Dan and Runo argue who get to battle the brothers, but they suggest it be a combination battle. At first, they just can't seem to battle in sync, which costs them Pyrrhus Griffin, Pyrrhosaurus, and Heio's Serpenoid. Putting their differences aside, they lock in and take out the brothers. While Dan and Runo are chatting with the other brawlers Alice, Julie, and Marucho, they find out that Marucho is stupid rich and that he's moving into a mansion in Wardington, where Dan and Runo live. They are invited to his housewarming party, and there, they meet Marucho's parents. They basically call Dan and Runo poor and don't even try to hide it.
Yes, we upgraded everything thanks to a sweet land deal. In fact, Dan's neighborhood is so cheap, I nearly bought out the entire block.
Check this out. Whoa, this place is totally off the hook.
Yeah, Dan, I'm sure the space is bigger than your house, but my bedroom's down the hall. That's the bathroom.
A brand new talking Bakugan makes his way into the mansion, because my boy goes wherever the party is. The gang finds him and we find out he is Iquo's prayers. Meanwhile, Masquerade recruits two pop idols, Jenny and Jules, who challenge Dan and Marucho to a battle. Dan and Marucho both agree to battle them, with Marucho teaming up with his new partner Prayers. And man, is Prayers my favorite talking Bakugan. No one can tell me otherwise.
Okay, pick a card, any card. Don't show me, I love a surprise.
During battle, Prayers flexes that he can change attributes. Prayers uses this ability to synergize attributes with the diagonal relationship ability cards and wins the battle. Drago finally tells the brawlers about what caused the Bakugan to appear on Earth and what is happening in Vestroia. Vestroya is comprised of 6 attribute worlds: fire, earth, wind, water, light, and the dark side, with the infinity and silent core at its center. The infinity core, the source of all positive energy, and the silent core, the source of all negative energy, creating balance in Vestroya. The rogue Bakugan Naga wants the power all for himself by penetrating the cores, but ended up not succeeding, instead releasing all the negative energy onto the Bakugan in Vestroya and Earth.
And everyone didn't live happily ever after. And that's it. Bye-bye.
Before all this chaos, a human once entered Vestroya and showed Naga how to enter the center of the world. Naga left Vestroya along with the Infinity Core. The human who corrupted Naga's mind, Dr. Michael Gahabich. We find out Dr. Michael Gahabich is Alice's grandfather and goes by Haljita Masquerade, who is trying to find the Infinity Core. Okay, so Masquerade, certified gaslighter in a Halloween mask, tricks 2 kids, Kosuke and Takashi, into doing his dirty work. He's like, if you beat the Battle Brawlers with these Doom cards, I'll totally reunite your friend Mui with her long-lost brother. And they just believe him, rookie mistake. The boys, trying to be the heroes of their own tragic side story, hunt down Runo and Marucho, who are just minding their business with Alice, and challenge them to a Bakugan battle. Kosuke and Takashi are fighting like they've got nothing left to lose, which, to be fair, they kinda don't. Runo and Marucho are getting cooked, then Alice reassesses the situation and helps them win the battle. As for Mui and her brother, we don't really know what happened. Masquerade probably just dipped. So Julie's out here catching L's from her childhood friend Billy, because he's got a talking Bakugan of his own named Subterra Cycloid. Billy tells Julie that he found Cycloid in the heart of Bakugan Valley, so obviously, our girl Julie heads to Bakugan Valley, hoping to score her own talking partner. But plot twist, she finds nothing. She's back home, low-key sad and feeling like the last kid picked for dodgeball. But then, wait for it, a talking Bakugan named Gorum just rolls up into her room like, "Yo, I got you." Fast forward, Julie and Gorum challenge Billy again, and wins with her new partner. The whole squad has gotten themselves a talking Bakugan. Dan has Pyrus Dragonoid, Runo has Heus Tigrera, Marucho has Iquo's Prayers, and Julie has Subterra Gorum. However, Marucho explains that even the combined power of everyone, they wouldn't be able to take down Masquerade. He notes that all 6 attributes need to be in alignment in order to fight at full power. Accounting for everyone, they're still missing Aventus and Darkus Powerhouse. Remember Mr. Hotshot Shun. Former rank 1 brawler, the guy that Dan wants to surpass. Yeah, that's Shun. You think Dan approves? Nah, who cares? Yo Runo, you wanna hop in my private jet and just do it behind his back. They find Shun's estate, and when they enter, they were met with some booby traps and Shun's grandfather. Gramps tells them that Shun doesn't brawl anymore and tries to kick them out. But when I tell you, they do something so foul.
Where are we?
A battlefield.
I accidentally opened the field. So, do you guys want to battle?
Are you nuts?
Wait a minute, I've got an idea. You stopped time when Shun's grandpa was about to attack. All we have to do is find the exact spot where we were standing.
Ah, I think I caught your drift. Let's do it.
I do believe we were standing right about here.
Okay, we'll just move over here.
Are you ready? You got it.
Field closed.
This is gonna leave a mark!
They end up finding Shun, and he tells them the same thing his grandpa told them. And guess who has the last laugh?
Didn't I tell you, kids? My grandson doesn't want anything to do with you two. Now skedaddle before I get all ninja on you.
Shun and his talking Bakugan, Ventus Skyres, have a little therapy session and convince Shun to brawl again. Shun challenges both Runo and Marucho and says he'll join the team only if they beat him. They all set their gate cards. Marucho goes first and sends out Iquo's Terraclaw and immediately gets clapped by Ventus Falconeer. Runo sends out Heosaurus and Shun sends Falconeer back out. They come up with a plan and Marucho throws out Iquo's Limulus and gives it a power boost with his ability card. Shun plays his Ventus Ravenoid and Runo sends out Tigrera. Ventus Skyres then enters the battlefield, has a top-tier entrance by the way, and the battle is on. Shun activates Winds of Fury and literally sweeps all of their Bakugan on the field. Talk about broken. Shun still has 3 Bakugan, while Runo and Marucho are down to their last ones, but yet somehow think they can still come back from this. Marucho sends his prayers out against Falconeer. Shun opens his gate card, Positive Delta, which reduce the opponent's power level by 200 Gs if they are using a Bakugan with either Iquos, Heios, or Pyrus attributes. Prayers does a big brain play and changes his attribute to Darkus. It causes Falconeer to lose 200 Gs, since the effect reverses if the opponent uses a Bakugan with either Ventus, Subterra, or Darkus attributes. Prayers takes out Falconeer while Runo sends out Heios Griffin. She activates Venomous Beast Torrent attack, which swaps Griffin with the already defeated Tigrera, wiping out Ravenoid. Now it's all tied up. Prayers and Tigrera team up at a combined power level of 740 Gs, but Shun uses his final ability card to increase Skyres to 920 Gs, winning the battle and the wager. But why does Dan have this rivalry with Shun? We find out that Dan and Shun used to be day one homies and did everything together. They even created the rules of Bakugan together, but one day, Shun starts distancing himself because his mother is in the hospital. Dan, completely disregarding others' traumatic life situations as usual, just wants to brawl Shun.
You know, it was weird, like something changed in him when his mom went into the hospital.
Shun, coming to the realization that his mother might die soon, brawls Dan and tries to prolong the battle to keep his mother alive.
What the heck? Are you trying to trick me?
Just keep playing, because I don't ever want to stop.
But why? What's going on?
Let it go. You wouldn't understand.
Aw, come on! Look, it can't be that bad. We can talk after we finish the game.
After the battle, Dan and Shun rush to the hospital, where his mother ended up giving Skyres to Shun as a parting gift. Dan stands as he watches Shun go through his loss and finally understand why he left brawling.
Anyway, the game won't miss a no-show has-been, and neither will I.
Masquerade is in his lair when we find out he has a Hydronoid that's just cooking kids everywhere on the leaderboard. Halgi shows up to start plotting against Dan. Naga needs Dragonoid to be taken out so he can get the Infinity Core without any interference. Masquerade reveals that he's going to manipulate Shun to go against Dan. After Dan discovers that Runo and Marucho met with Shun behind his back, he decides to join them for another attempt to recruit Shun. After casually hopping over his fence, Dan finds Shun and Masquerade is with him. Why does bro think he's him? Let me remind you, Dan Cuso is sitting at rank 97 on the leaderboard at this point in the series. Pretty trash for someone who helped create the game, by the way. He challenges former rank 1 and current rank 1 at the same time. He can't be for real.
I got an idea. I'll take both of you losers on at once. You know, take out 2 birds with 1 stone. Unless, of course, those 2 birds are big ol' yellow-bellied chickens.
They set their gate cards and the battle begins. Masquerade throws out Darkus Laserman and Dan throws out Pyrus Stinglash. Masquerade activates Leap Sting on Laserman and it's just throwing shots at Stinglash, sending it to the Doom Dimension. Shun finally sees the Doom Dimension for the first time and continues to send out Ventus Monaris. Masquerade throws out Darkus Reaper and Dan throws out Pyrus Garganoid. Shun activates Air Battle on Monaris and starts putting rounds through Garganoid 2. Dan is down to his last Bakugan Drago. Masquerade throws out Darkus Laserman onto a newly set gate card, Dan throws out Dragonoid against Reaper, and Shun throws out Ventus Monaris. Masquerade opens his gate card, Third Judgment, which allows him to send another Bakugan out, Darkus Hydronoid. Dan activates Boosted Dragon on Drago, which has no effect on Hydronoid. Hydronoid counterattacks, but Shun counterattacks and activates Crimson Twister, which moves Drago to the same gate card as Monaris, taking Monaris out, returning Drago to Dan. With Third Judgment still active, only 1 Bakugan can be on the field. Hydronoid then murks Reaper, sending him to the Doom Dimension. Next round, Dan throws out Drago, Shun throws out Ventus Falconeer, and Masquerade throws out Hydronoid against Drago. Dan opens his gate card, Triple Battle, which forces 3 Bakugan to go head-to-head. Shun, coming to his senses, joins Dan to battle Masquerade with Skyres. Masquerade activates Chaos of the Darkness, which allows Hydronoid to attack everyone, sending Falconeer and Laserman to the doomed dimension. Skyres distracts Hydronoid, while Drago uses Boosted Dragon to defeat Hydronoid. Masquerade somehow disappears, but Shun and Dan continue their battle. Let's see what you got, Dan. Dan activates Fire Tornado to weaken Skyres. Shun activates Green Nobility Violent Wind, doubling her power level, which takes out Drago, giving the official victory to Shun. After contemplating, Shun decides to make amends with Dan and rejoin the Battle Brawlers on the quest to defeat Masquerade. Alice, who currently works and lives at Runo's residence, is still shaken up about the recent news of her grandfather Michael. She struggles to find a way to break the news to everyone. Somewhere else, 5 of the top 10 brawlers are invited to a house. We see Billy again, and he is met with the other 4 brawlers. Rank number 2, Klaus von Hertzon. Rank number 3, Chan Li. Rank number 4, Julio Santana. And rank number 5, Combo Charlie. They all get into a battle and set one big gate card. Billy throws out Subterra Cycloid, Combo throws out Ventus Harpus, Chan throws out Pyrrhus Fortress, and Julio throws out Heus Tentaclear. Klaus is cooking for a split second with his Iquos Cyanide when Masquerade rudely interrupts and uses Naga to manipulate them to destroy Dan. Back at Marucho's palace, Alice reveals to the brawlers that Dr. Michael Gahabich is her grandfather. She tells them that he disappeared 6 months ago, right around the time Dan met Drago. She doesn't know any more information other than his laboratory in Moscow. They take Marucho's private jet, and Shun really said, "Meet me at my crib, but it's very important you don't land, just keep flying." They get to Moscow, and at his laboratory, the brawlers find a message on a screen of Dr. Michael, explaining how he ended up in Vestroia. The last few years, Michael had been developing a device called the Dimension Transporter System. It's basically a portal. One day, something went wrong and a portal randomly opened up, sucking him into it. He finds out that he ended up in Vestroia and that there were monster-like creatures that inhabited it. Michael meets Naga for the first time, and Naga already trying a scheme. While Michael was away, Bakugan cards, or card-shaped energy bodies, started appearing on Earth. These card-shaped energy bodies were absorbing the living creatures in Vestroia and transporting them into Earth. In the human world, they can only take the form of a ball, but on the battlefield, which have the same dimensional structure as Vestroia, they take their original form. As normal, Dr. Michael says his final message. Creepy Michael appears on the screen talking typical villain stuff. Drago reveals that the minus power is taking over Michael, that when exposed, it accelerates the inner darkness of Bakugan and humans. Knowing that they have to find the Infinity Core before Naga, they go to Bakugan Valley to search for clues. The gang meets Julie there, and they all meet for the first time. Dan really out here pulling. Got a girl loving on you and a girl jealous of the girl loving on you. What could be better? Wait, I bet Dan knows the answer. In the cave, all the they're talking Bakugan allow the brawlers to observe Vestroia and what's happening in each of their worlds. Because of Naga, Vestroia is ultimately collapsing at a very fast rate. Outside the cave, they run into Billy and Comba, which turn out to be Julie's neighbors. Julie is heartbroken to find out that they work for Masquerade and challenges them with Shun. Julie and Shun win the battle, but Billy still shakes Julie off, leaving her devastated. Shun finds a lead about the Infinity Core at a canyon near Bakugan Valley. The brawlers start to wonder how Masquerade's posses keep showing up exactly where the brawlers are. Shun starts to suspect Webmaster Joe, an anonymous user who manages the Battle Brawler website. He keeps track of all the Battle Brawlers and can monitor all online activity. Unbeknown to everyone else, Shun was actually testing a theory that Webmaster Joe is leaking chats to Masquerade and lied to everyone else about this new location to see if another one of Masquerade's soldiers would show up. Shun's actually a genius because yes, Chan Li shows up to challenge Dan. Dan cooks her with a play that no one's seen before, Fusion Ability, which lets you combine an ability with an already existing one. After the battle, the brawlers confirm their speculation on Webmaster Joe. Back on the plane, Dan broadcasts a message asking anyone if they have information on the Infinity Core, knowing full well that it could be a trap. They get a reply from someone in Germany, claiming he has information on the Infinity Core. Turns out it's Klaus von Hertzon. Wow, who saw that coming? Dan challenges him, but Marucho steps up to the plate full confidence, knowing that he works for Masquerade. Marucho and Klaus set their gate cards. Marucho throws out Iquo's Limulus, and Klaus throws out Iquo's Stinglash. Preyas couldn't wait to show off his magic trick, so Marucho throws him out against Stinglash. Preyas changes his attribute to Subterra, and Marucho activate Iquo's and Subterra diagonal, but Klaus counters with his gate card Scapegoat, which basically lets Klaus decide if the round should continue. Klaus decides not to continue. Preyas and Stinglash return to their owners, and it's a draw for round 1. Klaus sets a gate card and throws out Iquo's Cyanide and activates Dive Mirage. Marucho tries to open his gate card, but Cyanide nullifies it and sends Limulus to the doomed dimension. Round 3, Marucho throws out Iquo's Juggernoid on his gate card. Klaus throws out Iquo's Terraclaw onto his own gate card, and Marucho throws out Preyas against Terraclaw. Preyas changes to Darkus and Marucho activates Darkus and Iquo's Correlation, but Klaus counters with his gate card Biohazard, which reverses the attribute change, causing the round to end in another draw. Next round, Klaus throws out Iquo's Stinglash against Juggernoid. Marucho opens his gate card and activates Depth Tornado, both increasing Juggernoid's power level, but Klaus counters by activating Abyss Ruler, which got Juggernoid spinning straight to the doomed dimension. Marucho sends out Preyas against Cyanide, and Marucho is worried that there's a chance Preyas could be sent to the doomed dimension. Preyas got it though. Klaus activates Anthemusa, pulling Preyas towards the whirlpool. Preyas tries to fight it, but it's useless. Preyas gets drowned and Marucho loses the battle. Klaus tells Marucho that Preyas has been sent to the doomed dimension. Klaus leaves and Marucho and Runo chases after him. They end up in Masquerade's castle, where they find his big screen that shows the power level of Bakugan all around the world. The Brawlers are surprised at such high power levels, and Drago explains that Bakugan can evolve through battle. Eventually there will be an ultimate Bakugan, and the current highest rank is Hydronoid. Masquerade appears with the ranked 4th brawler, Julio Santana. Marucho, wanting to get revenge for his Preyas, decides he wants the smoke again, but instead, Runo challenges Julio. Dan enters the battlefield as well, and a couple doomed dimensions later, Dan and Runo emerge victorious. Still trying to hide his pain from the loss of his partner, Marucho makes the other brawlers quarrel about what their next plan of action should be. Dan and Julie ultimately decides to leave Marucho and the gang behind because Dan is a stand-up guy. While still in Germany, they bump into Billy, and Julie challenges him in hopes of trying to bring him back. Billy plays his Doom card, and each set their gate cards. Julie throws out Subterra Manion, and Billy throws out Subterra Centipoid. Julie sets another gate card and throws out Subterra Tusker. Billy activates a tractor, moving Manion to Centipoid's gate card, and opens his gate card, Magma Fuse, sending Julie's Manion and Tusker to the doomed dimension, losing the first round. Julie then sends out her Gorum and activates Mega Impact at the same time, taking out Centipoid, winning the second round. Billy throws out Subterra Rataloid against Gorum and activates Poison Fang, taking some of Gorum's power. Julie opens her gate card, Grand Spirit, doubling her lost power, and wipes out Rataloid. It's Gorum versus Billy's Cycloid now. Billy activates Copycat on Julie's Mega Impact, but Gorum is still in the lead. However, Billy's Poison Fang ability from earlier still lingers, weakening Gorum's power. As Billy instructs Cycloid to take the final blow, even Cycloid hesitates because Julie is physically on Gorum, meaning he would be sending her to the doomed dimension as well. Masquerade appears to gaslight Billy, saying it will bump up his rank, and as Julie and Gorum get closer to their demise, he deactivates his Doom card, betraying Masquerade and saving Julie. After dropping off Billy at Bakugan Valley, yet another quarrel breaks up the Battle Brawlers, this time with Shun running off after telling Dan that he is tired of being friends with him because, let's be real, when you have friend after friend telling you that you're being too harsh, you start to think who the real problem here is. Alice tries to calm things down by following Shun to explain to him that they're a team fighting for the same cause, but Shun just wants to do things solo dolo. You would think after finding out about Webmaster Joe that the Brawlers would be more hidden, but Shun, running off someplace random, a literal ninja, gets stopped by Masquerade's goon, Comba Ochali, ranked 5th brawler. Shun obviously wipes the floor with Comba, literally 3-0'd him. Dan and Shun make up because Dan actually knows how to say sorry now, and Comba begs Shun to be his master. So Naga is pissed at Masquerade, and Halji because Drago keeps getting stronger, and that they still haven't found the Infinity Core. The Goon Squad is pissed at Masquerade because Billy and Comba betrayed them. The Brawlers are pissed because they need to get prayers back. We find out that Masquerade actually teleports with the same portal cards Naga and Halji uses, and that's how he's able to magically appear anywhere and everywhere. The Brawlers drops Comba off, and what do you know? Julio, Chan, and Klaus show up and challenges the Brawlers. Marucho, without prayers, volunteers to battle, along with Dan and Runo. Holy, it's a 3-on-3, let's get it. Klaus, Chan, and Julio throws their Doom cards, and everyone sets their Gate cards. Klaus goes first and throws out Aikwo's Griffin. Runo throws out Heyo's Mantries against Griffin, and Klaus activates Cheering Battle, allowing Klaus to send out another Bakugan. Klaus teases my boy Marucho and sends out none other than prayers, but prayers ain't prayers no more. Mantries gets wiped out by their attack and is sent to the Doom Dimension. Now Julio throws out Heyo's Fear Ripper and Marucho throws out Aikwo's Stinglash against Fear Ripper. Julio opens his Gate card double battle, forcing them to send out Aikwo's Limulus and Heyo's Centipoid. Marucho still don't got enough juice, but Dan comes in with great advice.
This never would have happened if he'd let me go first!
Dan, this is not the time to be complaining!
Julio, as if he's not strong enough, activates Rapid Heyos, allowing someone to send out a Bakugan, and Klaus sends out prayers and sends Stinglash and Limulus to the Doom Dimension. Finally, Chan gets some action and sends out Pyrus Garganoid, and Dan sends out Pyrus Warius. Chan opens her Gate card Intercept, which stops time and allows the next player to take their turn, which is Klaus. Klaus, who can't rub it in Marucho's face enough, sends out prayers and sends Warius to the Doom Dimension. Runo throws out Heyo's Ravenoid onto her Gate card, and Julio throws out Heyo's Tentacleer against Ravenoid and activates Blinder, which wipes Ravenoid out, sending it to the Doom Dimension. Chan sends out Garganoid, and Dan sends out Drago, but Chan activates Triple Battle, which allow Klaus again to send out prayers. But nah, the Battle Brawlers ain't having it this time. Dan activates Rapid Fire, allowing Runo to throw out Tigrera onto the battle. Drago knocks prayers back to ball form. It's a new round. Julio throws out Heyo's Centipoid against Tigrera, and Runo activates Pure Light, allowing one to restore any Bakugan that's been lost, no matter whose side it's on. Runo literally makes a godsend play without Dan pretty much, because all he is a certified yapper. Julio throws out Fear Ripper and Prayers makes his heroic return. Marucho activates Blue Stealth, nullifying Julio's Gate card and taking out Fear Ripper. Klaus throws out Aikwo's Griffin onto his newly set Gate card, and Julio throws out Heyo's Tentacleer. Fearing that they might activate Fire, Water and Light triple node, Marucho sends out Prayers against Griffin, but it's a trap. Klaus's Gate card, Mind Ghost, opens and does a double homicide, wiping Griffin and Prayers, but Marucho wasn't about to let it happen again. He activated Dive Mirage in anticipation of Mind Ghost going off and saves Prayers. Chan throws Fortress onto the same Gate card as Tentacleer and activates Quartet Battle, forcing Drago and Cyanide out for a 4-on-1. Marucho activates Fire, Water and Light triple node, increasing Drago's power level by a mere 200 Gs. Desperate, Runo again making big brain plays, decides to trust in Drago and activates Tigrera's Cut-in Slayer, transferring all of her and Prayers' power to Drago. This massive increase in power causes Drago to evolve into Delta Dragonoid. Using his new ability, D-Strike Attack, Drago takes out everyone and wins the battle for the Brawlers. Klaus returns Prayers to Marucho and Marucho offers him a ride, but Klaus got it like that too.
I appreciate the offer, but I own 3 private jets myself.
The Battle Brawlers ask them if they know anything about Webmaster Joe and his connection to Masquerade, and Chan tells them he is sick and in the hospital. They get to the hospital, and Dan accidentally gets separated from Drago and reveals that he doesn't have the mobility like other Bakugan. A boy actually finds Drago and returns him to Dan and reveals that he is Webmaster Joe. They join on the rooftop, where Dan starts interrogating him as they start to battle. To Dan's surprise, this was Joe's first battle ever. Just when the battle is starting to get exciting, Joe suddenly faints and is taken back to his hospital room. Joe is okay, and he explains that he has no connection to Masquerade, so naturally, they ask him to join them in their fight to stop Masquerade and Naga from destroying both Earth and Vestroia. He accepts, and before the battle brawlers leave, Joe tells them about a dream he had where he met Naga's twin sister, Wyvern. Wyvern told Joe about how she absorbed the Infinity Core, just as her brother took the Silent Core. The brawlers return home with Julie, because she is crashing at Marucho's place now. Alice teaches a boy named Christopher on how to properly play Bakugan, because he is getting smacked around by an older kid named Travis. Christopher loses the first time, but discovers that his Iquo's Juggernaut can talk, and takes it home the second time. Now that the brawlers have met Joe, and confirms that he is not the spy for Masquerade, Runo now suspects that one of the brawlers is an imposter. And who does she suspect? None other than Alice, a girl who doesn't battle or even have a Bakugan. Her grandpa is literally Halji, and she is rarely seen with the brawlers. At the same time, Julie is also doing her own detective work. She suspects our boy Mr. Hotshot Shun, because he is always doing things on his own and doesn't talk about what he does. Runo's evidence makes no sense at all, and Julie is Sherlock Holmes because when she goes to look for clues about Shun, she finds him talking to a mysterious old man that totally looks like Hal G. Spot on, Julie. Marucho seems to believe someone breached the Battle Brawler website and hacked their way into the chat rooms and stole a bunch of files. Dan and Runo run into Akira and Shuji again for a rematch, but this time they brought their sister Nene. You already know it's 4 Ls. Alice tells Dan and Runo that she is not the spy for Masquerade. So now, Shun and Alice are out of the clear. Runo is low-key having a midlife crisis and is burnt out by all this evil stuff going on. So naturally, Runo decides to quit brawling out of nowhere, in fear that she may lose all of her Bakugan including Tigrera, but Dan quickly snaps her out of it. At the same time, Masquerade is finally fed up with the lack of performance from the top-ranked brawlers. He hunts down Julio, Chan, Comba, Billy, and Klaus. With his roided-up Hydronoid, he sends all their partner Bakugan to the Doom Dimension, Heio's Tentaclear, Pyrus Fortress, Ventus Harpus, Subterra Cycloid, and Iquo's Cyanoid. Quite sad, actually. And during the battle with Klaus, Hydronoid even evolved into Dual Hydronoid. Joe is finally out of the hospital, and informs the brawlers that Masquerade had defeated the top-ranked brawlers. While sleeping, Masquerade infiltrates Dan's mind, or house, we actually don't know, and gives him a card of a time and place for their battle. The brawlers show up to that location, and their entrance is kinda cold. The Power Rangers are assembled, but only the red one battles. Make it make sense. Masquerade unveils his new Dual Hydronoid, and Dan sends out Delta Dragonoid. It's a battle of the evolutions. Dan opens Drago's character gate card, doubling his power level. Masquerade counters with Geyser Exedra, raising Hydronoid's power level by 100. Dan uses the D-Strike attack ability card and reinforces Drago with 400 more points, but Masquerade activates a fusion ability, Destruction Impact, increasing Hydronoid's power level by 100 and nullifying Dan's gate card. Hydronoid ultimately overpowers Drago and starts sending him to the Doom Dimension. Dan, unwilling to accept it, runs towards the portal and jumps in along with Drago. In the Doom Dimension, Drago sees a bunch of Bakugan that were previously sent here, turned into stone. Drago sees Dan in the distance and is shocked that he followed him in here. Back on Earth, Masquerade sets his eyes on challenging Shun and his Skyres. At the same time, Dan's mom starts to get worried and slowly realizes that Bakugan isn't just a children's game. Shun gets the invitation from Masquerade, but he doesn't tell the brawlers. Skyres goes behind Shun's back and huddles up the rest of the Bakugan. She tells them that Shun plans to deliberately lose so he can enter the Doom Dimension with Skyres to try and retrieve Dan back. Skyres tells Prayers about the 6 legendary soldiers that once saved Vestroia from destruction by putting themselves on the line. The brawlers eventually all come to an agreement on Shun's plan. Everyone asks their parents if they'd be okay with them, that their child gets sent to purgatory with little possibilities of ever coming back. Marucho's butler, who always flies him and his friends, takes the day off this time. Alice also doesn't come and is staying behind for Runo at the restaurant. Runo assures Dan's mom that he will be home soon. Worried about Runo's mysterious message, she searches and sees Dan's friends and a masked brawler in an abandoned factory, but before she could get there, Runo and Dan's friends vanished. When she asked the masked brawler where Dan and his friends went, he leaves the scene only to say, Doom Dimension. In the Doom Dimension, Dan finds his friends, and is pissed that they would deliberately lose to Masquerade, but they all come to an agreement on trying to get out. The brawlers are then confronted by the 6 legendary soldiers of Vestroia. The Pyrrhus soldier Apollonia, the Subterra soldier Clafe, the Heyu soldier Lars Lion, the Darkus soldier Exidra, the Iquos soldier Frosh, and the Ventus soldier Oberon. The legendary soldiers tests the brawlers' resolve and skill, and say that they will release them and every Bakugan that has ever been sent to the Doom Dimension if they win. The first of the brawlers to be tested is Julie. Julie finds herself back at home. At first, she thinks she is really at home, but Gorum explains that they're really still in the Doom Dimension, and it is just an illusion created by one of the legendary soldiers, Clafe. Julie's sister, Daisy, who is also an illusion, then challenges her to a brawl. Julie finds it difficult at first to battle her sister, whom she believes outdoes everything she does. Julie takes the first 2 losses, but comes back and ties it up. Daisy sends out Subterra Clafe, and Julie sends out Gorum. Clafe is overpowering Gorum, and as Gorum is about to go down, he reminds Julie that she can just be her own person and try her best no matter if she wins or loses. Gorum fights back, and the same shimmering aura appears on him, as it did with Drago. Gorum evolves into Hammer Gorum, and Julie activates Grand Impact, knocking out Clafe and winning the battle. Julie passes her test, and the next one up is Marucho. Marucho finds himself facing the Iquos soldier, Frosh, and a mirrored version of himself. After losing the first round, he realizes that the mirrored Marucho is a reflection of the real Marucho's past. Marucho's parents wanted him to take over the family name, so they would pressure him to study hard and not let him have fun. Marucho always obeyed and tried his best to live up to their expectations. But he is not that person anymore. His world changed when he met the brawlers and finally had a taste of freedom. Preyers is not feeling well, but somehow wins the next round. Marucho sends out Preyers again, but starts losing because his stomach hurts. Preyers tells Marucho to accept his past, because it made him who he is today. Preyers then spits out the thing that's been making his stomach uneasy. It turns out to be a Bakugan and his brother, Iquos Preyers Angelo. Angelo is an Iquos Bakugan, who also classifies as Heus. Preyers and Angelo wins the round again. Past Marucho sends out Iquos Frosh, and Marucho sends out Preyers, and activates triple battle causing him to send out Angelo. But this time it's his alter ego, Iquos Preyers Diablo. Past Marucho activates Iquos Cyclone, gaining the upper edge, but Preyers changes his attribute to Darkus, and Marucho activates Pyrrhus and Darkus diagonal relation, because Diablo is also half Pyrrhus. Marucho wins the battle, accepts his past, and passes the test. Shun finds himself in a strange city. He becomes convinced that his test is about being isolated from society. He even mocks the test, stating it as far too easy. He then finds a little girl who wants to play tag with him, and after some playing, they go watch the sunset. Shun and Skyress realizes the sun never sets. Finally, Shun recognizes the young girl as his mother when she was young. Things turn for the worst for Shun as she challenges him to a brawl with the legendary Ventus soldier, Oberus. Distracted by her resemblance to his mother, Shun struggles as Oberus unleashes illusions, causing him to hallucinate while Skyress desperately fights back. Despite her efforts, Skyress is defeated and falls, leaving Shun devastated. Realizing too late how much he needs his friends, Shun mourns her loss. His tears fall onto Skyress's ability card, releasing a light that revives her and triggers her evolution into Storm Skyress. With renewed strength, Storm Skyress defeats Oberus. After the battle, Oberus appears before Shun, entrusting the brawlers with the mission to save Vestroia, and Shun vows they can be trusted to do what's right. Now it is time for Runo to pass her test. Tigrera and Runo find themselves wandering in a forest full of mist. Runo pleads and wishes that Dan would be here to guide them. And what do you know? A little boy that has a striking resemblance to someone we know is here to guide them. Runo has a flashback about this little boy when they were younger, and they've been beefing on first sight. He runs off and leads her to a cottage where the boy comes out to challenge her. Runo always thought that she met Dan after Bakugans started appearing on Earth. Realizing that it was actually Dan, she accepts the challenge. Runo loses with her first 2 Bakugans simply because she won't acknowledge that she treasures her friendship with the real Dan. Being stubborn, Runo won't admit anything to Lars Lion. However, when Tigrera is being attacked, Runo is forced to admit that she really does treasure Dan. By doing this, Tigrera evolves into Heios Blade Tigrera and defeats Lars Lion, thus passing their test. Now that Julie, Marucho, Shun and Runo have all passed their tests and received their newly evolved partners, it is time for Dan and Drago to confront their test in order to free the brawlers from the Doomed Dimension. Back home, Joe and Alice discuss the troubling events in the Doomed Dimension. After their talk, Alice goes for a walk but suddenly faints and Christopher discovers her unconscious. Meanwhile, Wyvern appears before Joe, explaining Naga's threat and the situation surrounding the Infinity Core. Their conversation is interrupted when Masquerade arrives, declaring his intent to claim the Infinity Core. At the same time, Christopher returns to check on Alice, only to find that she has mysteriously vanished. Dan and Drago battle Apollonia, the leader of the legendary soldiers of Vestroia and the most powerful Dragonoid. Apollonia uses a masked clown as a brawler. The clown uses 2 mock-style Dragonoids, and in an intense battle, Dan comes out victorious. Even though they defeat Apollonia, Drago has not evolved like the others. But after unmasking the clown and finding Runo's face underneath, Apollonia explains that in order for Drago to evolve again, he will need to defeat the other brawlers as a second test. Dan and the rest of the brawlers return from the Doomed Dimension, but Dan is unsure how to tell them that he didn't pass his test, or how he needs to battle all of them in order to do so. Meanwhile, Joe and Wyvern are challenged by Masquerade, who wants the Infinity Core from Wyvern. Wyvern single-handedly defeats all of Masquerade's Bakugan, including Dual Hydronoid, allowing Joe to claim victory. She firmly tells Masquerade that if Naga wants the Infinity Core, he will have to face her himself. Masquerade says he ain't no delivery boy, then teleports away in defeat. All the brawlers return home and Dan explains the whole situation to his mother. Drago reunites with Wyvern and let's just say,
"As guilty as charged. Let's just say Drago and I have a history together. Isn't that right, Drago Rooney?"
Yes, but not in front of the kids.
Oh, Drago Rooney, you still know how to ruffle my feathers, don't you?
Dan finally tells Shun, Julie and Marucho that he has yet to pass the test in the Doomed Dimension, and the only way to have Delta Dragonoid evolve is to defeat his friends one by one. Dan beats Julie and Marucho, then prepares to have his rematch with Shun. The next morning, Drago tries to go on his own for a bit, but is just secretly trying to get some. Drago and Wyvern reminisce on the good old times, and also how Naga became so power-hungry. Naga and Wyvern, known as the White Ones, are mutated Bakugan born without an attribute. Born during the process of evolution, they are the Forgotten Ones, who live powerlessly in between dimensions. Naga, frustrated by his fate, decided to seek power in the Infinity and Silent Core, which would make him the most powerful Bakugan. When things didn't turn out as expected, Wyvern was sent to Earth along with the Infinity Core. Before Dan battles Shun that day, Tigrera makes a request to battle Drago to see how she fares up against him. But after an intense battle, Tigrera acknowledges Drago as the stronger warrior. It's the battle that everyone is looking forward to, the showdown between Dan Kuso and Shun Kazami. At this point in the series, Shun has already pummeled Dan twice. As the battle is about to begin, Joe and Wyvern both join in to watch the battle, and with everyone assembled, the battle begins. They both come in hot, exchanging some blows, and Dan makes the first move. He activates D-Strike attack on Drago, boosting some power, but Shun counters with Ventus and Pyrus Correlation. After the exchange, Dan and Drago get knocked out and Shun basically says, "You're the main character, I know you're not going to take 3 L's from me in a row." Dan gets back up and the fight continues. Shun activates Destruction Meteor Storm on Skyres, but Dan counters with a fusion ability, D-Strike Extreme, defeating Skyres. Drago, having defeated all his friends, finally evolves into Pyrus Ultimate Dragonoid. You must be asking yourself, how come all of the legendary soldiers have battled except the darkest soldier, Exedra? Well, Masquerade, with his humiliating defeat, realizes his dual hydronoid can evolve even further, so he uses the transporter card to enter the Doom Dimension. In the Doom Dimension, he encounters Exedra, who uses an illusion of Alice as a brawler. During this battle, Masquerade reveals his ultimate goal is just to be the undisputed world champion, as he watches his dual hydronoid also evolve. During all of this, the real Alice was still missing. After the chaos settles down on Earth and the Doom Dimension, Alice mysteriously returns and her memories are all hazy. Over at Dan's house, the brawlers are watching the news reports about all the strange weather events occurring around the world. Suddenly, from out of the blue, Joe is challenged by Masquerade to a rematch for control of the Infinity Core. Guess what? You will never be able to guess, but Alice is gone again. Dan decides to take on Masquerade in Joe's place, because Drago has evolved into an ultimate Bakugan. Now that Dan beat Shun, his ranking is now at 2nd, and Masquerade still sits at number 1. The battle begins, and it's the final showdown between Dan and Masquerade. Masquerade unveils his new Darkus Alpha Hydronoid, and Dan shows off too with Pyrrhus Ultimate Dragonoid. They tussle back and forth with blow after blow. None of them want to give in, and it's an equal state of power. Masquerade really wants this win, like really wants it, like even more than Dan. Dan looks like he is actually having quite a good time. And after successfully rage-baiting Masquerade, Dan activates Ultimate Dragon. Masquerade counters with Terminal Trident, but Dan activates his gate card, evening it back up. Masquerade activates Final Demolition to try and get the edge, but Dan plays the ability, Exceed, giving Drago the slight advantage. Another couple tussles, and this time, it is not a draw. Dan wins the battle and Masquerade finally sees that you don't always have to win. Dan asks him to join the team believing that he can help in the battle against Naga, but in a final twist, just as Masquerade is about to shake Dan's hand, he stops. Lifting his hand up to his mask, Masquerade tells Dan that joining the team wouldn't work out and he pulls off his mask. As Dan and the other brawlers look on in shock, Masquerade's hair color changes from yellow to red and falls down to rest at her shoulders. Masquerade has finally been unmasked, and he is obviously Alice. Suddenly, Hal G appears as a holographic projection and explains how he and Alice became their alter egos after being exposed to the negative energy from the silent core once Naga tried getting it. After finding out that she is Masquerade, Alice feels guilty for everything she has done, and so she goes with Hal G and they disappear together. Meanwhile, strange environmental events are happening all over the world, including a giant dimensional rift to Vestroia, which suddenly appeared in the Pacific Ocean. The brawlers prepare to enter this portal in order to stop Naga from destroying both worlds. Since disappearing, Alice has been living with her aunt. She runs off and finds herself at a familiar castle. This castle belongs to none other than Klaus von Hertzon. She tells him about what she did as Masquerade. Klaus ultimately forgives her, stating that everyone and everything can work together in order to create harmony. After jumping into the dimensional rift found in the middle of the ocean, the brawlers arrive in Aventus Iquo's world. They realize Vestroia has become a hybrid world because of the merged attributes. While trying to make their way to the core of Vestroia, they encounter Iquo's Ventus hybrids, Tajan and Heiridi. Shun and Marucho step up to fight them while Dan and the others enter the gate to the Subterra Hei's world. Shun and Marucho find the hybrid Bakugan difficult to defeat due to the combination of the attributes, but succeed in defeating them in the end. When Dan, Julie and Runo land in the Subterra Hei's world, they are greeted by Rabida and Tricloid, two of Naga's lackeys, the Earth and Light World gatekeepers. Rabida and Tricloid challenge them to a race to the gate to the Pyrrhus Darkus world. The brawlers easily defeats Rabida and Tricloid in the race, with Dan heading to the Pyrrhus Darkus world alone. In this world, Garganoids are running rampant and suddenly, two hybrid Bakugan show up, revealing their names as Drumin and Centauria. As Dan and Drago get knocked out, an old friend of Drago's manages to save them. A Pyrrhus Tigrera named Nova Lion, known as the wisest and oldest Bakugan in Vestroia. He explains how the negative energy has been influencing all of Vestroia, except for those who are intelligent enough to hide. Dan and Drago explains their mission, and Nova Lion leads them to the center of Vestroia. But before they could get there, they are stopped by Drumin and Centauria. Nova Lion gets fatally wounded, but before he disappears forever, he explains the reality of Vestroia. When the universe was created, it was peaceful. It wasn't until the core split into two, forming the Infinity and Silent Core. This caused the formation of the 6 attribute worlds. In turn, the Bakugan with different attributes couldn't survive in each other's attributed worlds anymore. It became survival of the fittest. However, the Bakugan that didn't fit into any of the new worlds were driven into the void between dimensions. At the same time, Alice makes her final decision on whether or not she will be a full member of the Brawlers, and lets Klaus know that she plans to help Dan. While on the brink of defeat, Masquerade and Hydronoid arrive just in time to save Dan and Drago. They devise a plan to take down Druman and Centauria. Drago lures Druman while Hydronoid draws Centauria's attention, successfully pulling them both into range of a gate card. Masquerade activates the card and the two enemies begin to weaken, but the plan suddenly collapses when Druman destroys the gate card. Drago attacks in response, yet Druman reflects the strike, causing it to rebound and hit Hydronoid. Masquerade and Alpha Hydronoid are knocked off a cliff. However, Dan and Masquerade had anticipated this outcome. Dan and Drago continue battling, pushing Druman and Centauria toward a specific area. At Dan's signal, Masquerade and Hydronoid unleash a powerful long-range attack, appearing to finally destroy Druman and Centauria. After the battle, Masquerade takes off his mask, turning back into Alice and says farewell to Masquerade forever. Shun, Marucho, Runo and Julie arrive back from the previous worlds and are all surprised Alice is here. All the Brawlers, one by one, forgive Alice and all is forgotten. As the Battle Brawlers reach the center of Vestroia, they discover that Naga is no longer there, causing the Brawlers to wonder where he might be. Meanwhile, Naga appears on Earth to move on to the next phase of his plans. Naga closes the portal that connects Vestroia to Earth, a portal he opened to deliberately lead the Brawlers into. He then begins to open more portals around the world to let in his Bakugan army. Naga's ultimate goal is to capture Wyvern and to take the Infinity Core, and with the Brawlers out of the picture, it looks like he will succeed. But Joe doesn't give up and sends a message for help to any and all Brawlers willing to fight against Naga and his minions. Brawlers from all over the world, including the top Brawlers Chan, Klaus, Billy, Comber and Julio, answer Joe's message. With the overwhelming support, they go on the offensive against Naga and his team. Comber and Harpus lead one group of battlers against Tajan, while Billy and Cycloid lead another group against Rabida, and Julio leads a third team against Tricloid. Meanwhile, Chan and Fortress does a one-on-one battle against Centauria, and Klaus leads a fourth team against Druman and Heiridi. As the battle rages on, people from all over the world watch as kids and their Bakugan fight to protect the lives of everyone on the planet, and with the support of everyone, the Brawlers are slowly forcing their enemies back. Unfortunately, things take a turn for the worse when Naga uses the Silent Core to boost the power of his Bakugan and weaken the others. Not only that, but by using the Silent Core, Naga has finally located Wyvern. As the Bakugan from all the battlers are defeated, Naga's forces begin to converge on Wyvern's location. Wyvern, in a last stand, puts up a force field to protect the city, but everyone is still giving up until they are reminded that they still have the Battle Brawlers on their side. Wyvern and Joe are finally able to contact the Brawlers and tell them that Naga has entered their world. Wyvern opens a portal to Earth, and the Battle Brawlers use it to return home. Quickly, the Battle Brawlers split up to stop them from reaching Wardington. Marucho finds himself confronted by Tajan again. They battle against each other with the help of Jenny and Jules. Fans arrive to cheer the JJ dolls on, and after the battle is over, with the Brawlers emerging victorious, Marucho receives a smooch from the JJ dolls. Somewhere else, Naga promises to make Tricloid immortal and let her see her sister Rabida. That is, of course, if she can eliminate the Battle Brawlers. To accomplish this task, Naga gives Tricloid negative energy, making her more evil. Tricloid tracks down Julie and Billy and to their surprise challenges them to a brawl. They accept, but Tricloid is much stronger than they expected. When the battle becomes more and more difficult, Nene shows up to help defeat Tricloid. In the end, Julie realizes she likes Billy. He feels the same way with her and they both become a couple after she asked him out, to which he accepts. I always thought my boy Dan had it. Naga's troops have finally infiltrated Wardington after being defeated twice already. Alice discovers that Tricloid's sister, Rabida, is invading the town. Little does she know, Christopher also gets involved in the battle. Dan is informed that Heiridi, Centauria and Druman are also approaching the city following Tajan and Tricloid's defeat. When Rabida hears that Tricloid has been defeated, she falsely believes that she is dead and proceeds to go on a rampage. Just as Alice and Christopher are about to be overwhelmed, Klaus arrives to save the day. The three soon realize all Rabida is doing is being controlled by her worry for her sister. Alice starts doubting herself, but Christopher helps reassure her and defeat Rabida. She is then reunited with Tricloid as both of them return to Vestroia. Shun finds himself in a village where he's attacked by Heiridi, a Bakugan hybrid he and Marucho previously fought in Vestroia. Shun and Skyres meet up with Comba and begin to battle. At first, Skyres and Harpus do well against the evil Bakugan with the help of Comba. Later on, Heiridi creates a crystal ice cage to trap Skyres. Heiridi then pounds Skyres down with icicles. Skyres and Harpus are both tortured by Heiridi, who is much stronger than before and overpowers Shun and Skyres, leaving her trapped and Shun fighting Heiridi himself. Shun then literally takes matters into his own hands.
What are you doing?
I wasn't expecting you to show your face!
With the unexpected arrival of Julio, Skyres is released, and together they defeat Heiridi. Dan and Runo find themselves facing against Drumin and Centauria. Drago and Tigrera are standing their ground when they get a message from Marucha's butler, Kato. Kato informs the brawlers to gather at Wardington Tower, and tells them all except for Joe to join Dan and Runo in their battle. Kato's voice turns out to actually be Hal G, who has lured the brawlers away from Wardington Tower so he can get closer to Wyvern. Hal G pretends to turn back into Dr. Michael and enters Wardington Tower with Alice because she is the most oblivious person in the world. He reveals that he has Naga in ball form and sends him out, destroying the top of Wardington Tower. Centauria and Drumin create a force field to prevent the brawlers from aiding Wyvern against Naga. Shun just constantly uses his brain, shows up to help Wyvern. He knew that Kato's message was suspicious and a trap because he is very well-mannered and calls Marucho master, which Kato did not do. Chan Li and Fortress also lend a helping hand, but all is useless against Naga. While the brawlers are distracted fighting against Centauria and Drumin, Naga goes after Wyvern and the Infinity Core that she possesses. After Drago defeats Centauria, he runs off to battle Naga himself, but when Drago arrives, he finds Wyvern trapped with no other choice but to give the core to her brother. With Fortress and Skyres having been already defeated by Naga, Drago commences battle with Naga alone. During the battle, Drago unable to match Naga's silent core powers, Wyvern tells Drago that the only way for him to win the battle is for him to attack her and take the Infinity Core from her. Drago does so with the uttermost regret, knowing that it will be the only way to defeat Naga and to save Vestroia. Drago doesn't get his happily ever after, and Joe says goodbye to Wyvern forever. When Naga shows only annoyance at the death of Wyvern and no remorse of any kind, Drago becomes full of rage and evolves into Infinity Dragonoid. Infinity Dragonoid and Silent Naga commence battle, and Drago is able to back Naga into a corner. At this point, Halgi summons the 5th Paladin, 5 stone-like Paladin soldiers which act as an elite guard for Naga, to aid their master. Naga then sets the Paladins on Drago, who they manage to beat to the ground. Drago is down for the count, and humans can't enter the force field, but Bakugan can. That's when the battle brawlers step forward and launch their Bakugan into the battle. Hydronoid saves Drago and the rest of the Guardian Bakugan join, Prayers, Tigrera, Skyres and Gorum. The 5 Paladins protect Naga, but everyone counters with their signature move. Tigrera uses Velocity Fang, Prayers uses Blue Stealth, Gorum uses Grand Impact, Skyres uses Destruction Meteor Storm, and Hydronoid uses Terminal Trident, taking out all the Paladins. Drago and Naga engage in a final laser beam battle. Dan activates the fusion ability, Dexter Attack, and with the power of all 6 attributes, Drago defeats Naga and absorbs the Silent Core, becoming Infinity Dragonoid. Everything and everyone goes back to normal, but it seems like it's still not over. With Naga defeated, Earth and Vestroia are still continuing to merge, and Drago reveal there's only one way to restore balance in Vestroia. Drago must return the Infinity and Silent Core, and in doing so, Drago must become the perfect core of Vestroia himself, and that the Bakugan must all go back with him. It's a sad time, everyone says goodbye one last time, even with a photo commemorating their time together. But after all is said, Drago leads the Bakugan back home, where he meets up with his longtime love Wyvern. Time goes by and Danny Boy has a person to meet. He rides his trusty bike to the park and meets up with Runo. Dan, being Dan, always finds a way to fumble.
It's weird. I've never thought of you as a girl before.
You're a jerk!
Huh?
but the series ends with Dan looking at Drago over the distance. One last goodbye as Dan and Runo catch their movie.
Everything is perfect.